this is like intake. So if like a stray is found, like this handsome gentleman right here, they'll come in into intake. They'll post out to the community, you know, found dog, stray in the area. And unfortunately, a lot of the times, people don't come and claim their dog. So this handsome boy, he's fully intact, which means he hasn't been fixed yet. So since he hasn't been claimed, he will be fixed at some point. He'll be neutered. Then we'll assess his behavior. So far, he's super sweet, definitely just really kind of sad. He's a little underweight, so you could tell he might have been a stray for a while. But you know, this is like probably the most difficult thing, because part of you is like, well, why wouldn't somebody come get their dog, you know? And then the other part of you is like, well, maybe they can, or maybe something happened. You just never know. And so when you're working in shelter and rescue, there's that. There's a lot of things you just don't know about a dog and their history, and it can make it really difficult too. So, you know, we just go real slow with them. Food is always the way to a dog's heart, you know, so we'll give them tons of treats and just do our best to make them feel like they're gonna be all right, you know? And like I said, we don't know the dog's name, you know, when they come in. So then we have to like give them a name. And so imagine like your name is one thing for however long you've been alive, and then all of a sudden you're with a bunch of strangers in a strange place and they're calling you, like, we've been calling him Sonny. And he's like, who the heck is Sonny? You know, so yeah, there's a lot of that. There's a lot of that, which can be really difficult to navigate, like in your mind emotionally. But you're a good looking boy, you know that? You really are. And then, you know, we'll hopefully find him a home. Alger. I picked him up from Downey Animal Shelter, on the day he was supposed to be euthanized. I'll never forget it, because like in Los Angeles, in shelters here on the East Coast, Northeast, like we got to deal with weather. It gets really cold. So dogs are housed like inside. But there, a lot of them were housed outside, or they had kennels that like were inside, outside, they can come in and out. But it was just like rows and rows of dogs in kennels, you know? And it felt like I was walking through like a cell block. I'll never forget it, you know? And I remember like coming up to him and just being like, and I've had big dogs my whole life, but I remember being like, damn, this dude is something else. And the guy who worked there, the kennel attendant, was like, oh, this is a good dog, man, this is a sweet dog. And he was. But he came out of that kennel like you could see his muscle. He was like, boom, just flying out. Like, what's happening? What's going on? And that's the shelter environment. Again, like it's just so stressful. And so when that door opens, it's like everything a dog is supposed to do, they want to do it all in that one moment, you know? And he just had a regular slip lead, like a rope. And we walked, and I took it from him. And I was with like one of the ladies from the rescue. And then as we like walked out the gate, I had filled all the paperwork and stuff inside. We just like walked out the gate, they took a picture. I went, opened the minivan, he just jumped right in and just started like housing things, like picking things up and throwing things around, you know? Just was so, his pupils were like this big. He was just so amped up and happy. And I remember just kind of letting him go through that and sort of waiting for a moment where he might just be like, oh, cool, you know? But I couldn't even imagine what the dog was going through, you know, other than terrified and completely confused and stressed and whatever the case. But what's interesting is the shelter had recommended that if he were to go to a home, there'd be no other animals, like no other dogs, because when a dog comes into the shelter, we assess them as best we can. You know, we put them with other dogs, see how they do, if they play well, if they don't, if they're, you know, offensive aggressive, defensive aggressive, if there's all different play styles, you know, so you try to really figure out what the dog's about. So he was recommended to not be homed with any other dogs. And so right when I got him, like we drove like up the block, and I was like, I pulled over, I just walked him. And as we were walking, a German Shepherd comes like running off somebody's property, big German Shepherd, I'll never forget it. And I was like, I just kind of stopped, because you gotta chill. You have to chill. And that's one thing I've always known. Cesar Millan made everybody know that, like, it's true. Like, really calm energy is really important. And that dog came up, and they just kind of sniffed each other. And Alger wasn't like anything other than just checked him out, and then we were on our way. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. So maybe he's okay with other dogs, you know? And then we got back in the van and drove back to Venice. And he was just so happy, dude. That dog was like, tongue was out. He's like staring out the window, just so amped up to be free, for sure, you know? It's really interesting to note, you know, everything in the shelter rescue world is donation-based. These are all, you know, 501(c)s or not-for-profits. So everything in the shelter and rescue world is dependent upon like the generosity of other people, you know. So everything you see from food to beds. So if there's an estimated 14,000 like shelter and rescue organizations throughout the country, thinking about how each one of them needs to be funded on a daily basis, it's, you know, it can really change your view on things, about how difficult it actually is to keep places like shelters up and running and taking care of dogs, you know, especially when there's so many dogs coming through. There's a lot of things that we don't think about when we're like, oh, I'm gonna go get a dog. That's like really taking place in this world, to make dogs available to the public and then placing dogs that are safe and that can be placed in homes, you know, which is a whole nother story. To assume that dogs can just be pets, but that's for another film. So yeah, you know, the human spirit is pretty incredible when you think of it that way. You know, people do give, people are generous, people are empathetic, and you know, if we could just be that way with people too. This was really interesting from a behavioral standpoint. One of my roommates, we were like, all right, let's just take this dog. Like, we gotta just run this dog and burn some energy. So I was on a bike, my roommate was on the skateboard. When we started rolling, Alger was so focused on my roommate on the skateboard, like this high, like tense energy, like I gotta get that thing, you know, which is a prey drive for sure. Like, and they all have prey drive. They have prey drive, play drive, pack drive, and defensive drive. Prey drive is their drive to chase things, smaller things, creatures, whatever. Play drive, their drive to play. Pack drive, their drive to like be with people, dogs, and then defensive drive. But it was clear in that moment, and this was before I had actually really like done any like formal studying on dogs other than being with dogs. But like the feeling I got from that was like, oh, this is like, something's off with that, you know? Because I could tell right away he was an amazing dog. He knew he knew everything. Sit, hold, sit. He walked like on the leash, like he had been completely trained to do that. He was incredible. But like that, when I first saw that, I was like, oh, that's interesting. And as he's like running after my friend on the skateboard, he actually, he redirected and like snapped on my leg just out of it, like the sheer excitement, and got me on my leg, you know? And what's really interesting, this dog comes from the shelter, right? It's really, like I was saying before, it's really hard to assess dogs and really see what they're about, like inside of a shelter. It's almost impossible. You can't assess them with kids. You can't find out how a dog is with kids in a shelter. How do you do that? Hey, can you volunteer your kids to see how this dog is? Do you know what I'm saying? So there's that right off the bat. One of my roommates actually had a daughter. She was sitting on the counter and Alger like grabbed at her leg, like quickly. Like almost like, I want to play with this thing, but I want to play with it like a toy, you know? And I remember I called the rescue right after that. I was like, he just kind of like grabbed at my roommate's daughter's leg, and it's just like something off. And, you know, so like, okay, duly noted. You make a note of it and you kind of move on. And so the point of a rescue is like, I'm fostering a dog while they try to find the dog a home. And I just kept him from being euthanized because I had no space, you know what I'm saying? So my intention was never to keep him. It was just to like serve as a foster while they try to find a home for him, you know? And that's the tricky thing too. This is like really well-intended humans. Everybody, like most people that work in the dog world, just dealing with a lot of the time dogs with serious behavior issues that unless you're like trained and schooled in it, which I am now, you don't pick up on. The only thing I had going for me with him was sort of like that intuition and some like sort of like just life wisdom, like, oh, that's that shouldn't happen. You know what I'm saying? Like that feeling like, that's not good either. We just spent every day together. I didn't have a job really. I was just playing music. I was like doing construction. I was just doing whatever I could for money, you know? So I didn't really have a job. I just had him. It was just him and me. And like very quickly, like within a couple weeks, I'm like, all right, maybe this guy's just gonna be my dog, you know? By this point we're moving out. We were like basically living in my minivan, just me and him, sleeping on like the streets of Venice, which is actually comforting when you have a dog like that, when you're sleeping on the streets. But I'm like taking notes of this dog. We went out to the desert, hanging out with a friend out there. He's got a property. We go hiking up this mountain. And as we're hiking up the mountain, Alger's like, he's getting more ramped up. And then he like, my friend's in front of us and he starts like grabbing at my friend's arm, like at his sleeve, you know what I mean? And like, as he goes, I just like, I'm like, and he stops. But he was then just so worked up and focused on my friend. And it was his drive was like kicking in. There was like this person or thing in front of him moving. And he's just like that need to like chase is just like taking off, you know? And so then I was like, all right, this is like a real issue. You know, like there's something with this dog, like, and you get in a tough spot because you're like, I love this dog, but I can't, like, what do you do about this? You know what I'm saying? And then you become anxious. And then like, 3 minutes later, he's fine. That's gone. He's just chilling with my friend. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, we spent, like a full 2 months straight, like every day. I was just me and this dog. And we had been recording up in this studio up in Northern California, awesome studio. And there was a bunch of people involved, awesome, like great singers, backup singers. Like I had a cool little production going, which was really cool. We recorded the song I wrote for Tipsy, actually, was one of them. But there was another friend of mine there. She was there with her kid. And that's the thing with Alger. I had noticed too, like on the street, like anytime he saw something smaller, even if it was a kid, he'd just like, his demeanor would change. He would just see like, it looked like he was looking at like a big tennis ball rolling down the street. Like, oh, like, I want to go get that. And just like that thing, if you ever see that in dogs, that's a thing, that's a real thing. So I had a friend there. She was actually singing on the project. I believe she might be a vet now. She was studying to be a vet at the time, but she had her child there with her. And she was a baby. I don't know how old she was, maybe 8 months, 9 months, or older, a year maybe, something in that. But we had gone outside. We were all just kind of hanging out. It was a couple of us. I had Alger on leash. I had him on the leash. And we were actually talking about this. I was like, I don't know him. And like, when he sees like little things in kids, he just kind of, his demeanor changes. She was like holding her kid. I have him probably, I would say like 4 or 5 feet off, not too far off. And it's really interesting because he's like now sitting and he's like just staring at this kid. And had I known then what I know now about dogs, no way I ever would have been in that position at all. Like, I would have been immediately like, that dog's not going near anything small ever at all. But I didn't know, and that's how we learn in life. That's how we learn the most valuable lessons in life. We just totally screw up or, come really close to having something tragic happen. And so I actually said to her, I said, I'm going to put him in the car. I just don't I just don't feel good about it. And like, right as I said that, and, she was experienced with experienced animal person too. So like, as humans, like then we trust in each other. You have to, you know what I'm saying? But right as I said that, he like sprung and he went after the baby. From that point, I don't really remember much other than like jujitsu. Like that's what I remember happening in my mind, jujitsu. And I had him on leash. She fell, the baby fell on the ground. I remember seeing the baby here. And then I just remember like somehow like getting on his back and putting a choke on him and choking him and stopping him from attacking this child. I'm able to like choke him and wrestle him away. She picks up her child, checks to make sure there's like nothing major, at the moment. I'll never forget it. And then she was like, total like mama hen came over and kicked him like hard, you know? And he's just like, huh? You know what I'm saying? He's just like, why'd you kick me? You know, what did I do wrong? You know, you had this little creature. Or wasn't I supposed to like play with that thing or kill it? You know? Which is really interesting because for him, that's what he's supposed to do, right? So I put him in the van and I just right there, I was like, I was really mad too. And I don't really get mad often. Like anger is not really an emotion that I deal in anymore. But I was mad. I was like mad at him. I was really mad at myself. And I was just like, I'm taking this dog right now to be put down. That's the first thing I said. Other people there were like, just chill. Leave him in the van. They took the baby to the hospital. She came back. Everything's fine. Right? A truly like thank God moment, like thank God. There's no other, you know. But it's weird because it's all connected. Like I definitely trained jiu-jitsu for that moment, you know. So I called the rescue. I have to let the rescue know. I go, you know, that's it. Like he can't. I got to bring him back to you, and you got to decide what you want to do because ultimately he belongs to the rescue organization still, you know. And the decision, I mean, behavioral euthanasia is like a highly debated topic. But in a case like that, in my opinion, there's no question at all, you know? Because you could live, this might sound selfish, but you can live with putting a dog to sleep for something like that. But you can never live with a dog just like taking a child's life because you didn't do the right thing. You just can't. And in his defense, crossbreeding of pit bull terriers and all these big, strong dogs, it's made a mess of them. It's really caused a lot of like issues. And other than that part of him, the dog was brilliant. He was the most well-trained, loving dog ever.